Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for being here. I'd like to welcome you all to this extremely important conversation. We recognize that our shared humanities as inhabitants of this planet is critical. And right now, there's a lot of pain out there. So probably if there's a time for topic like what we're talking about, it is now. And it's good to have these thoughtful conversations and hopefully give you tools for how to make positive change. So I'm looking forward to this. And once again, thank you for being here. With that, let me introduce Mayen Udoetuk. She's our Director of Program and Partnership Development, and she conceptualized and leads our DEI initiatives here at the Extension. So thanks again, and over to you, Mayen.
Thank you so much, Dean PK. As mentioned, my name is Dr. Mayen Udoetuk. I regularly go by Mayen, and if you see me on the interwebs, please feel free to say hello. I wanted to start off before we get into our panel discussion by giving a little bit of insight into the vision that we have for DEI here at Extension. So just to kind of recap what PK mentioned just now, the UCSC Silicon Valley Extension is the professional continuing studies arm of the UC Santa Cruz campus. Specifically, we are a leading workforce education and training provider right here in the heart of Silicon Valley. Our 28 certificate programs and 380 courses are designed to allow students immediate application of new skills during their reskilling and upskilling efforts. To name a few, we offer certificates and courses in project and program management, database and data analytics, human resource management, bioinformatics, and educational therapy, just to name a few. One of our newest areas of development is that of diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known and will be referred to in this talk as DEI. Much like the design of our artificial intelligence program in development, we see the importance of DEI across industries. Specifically, artificial intelligence is known to be the premier cross-industry disruptive technology. DEI, or specifically the lack of DEI, is not only disruptive, it's harmful. So to that end, we are actively seeking subject matter experts to help us build courses and specializations towards a professional certificate in DEI. One such expert is Dr. Shindale Seale. Dr. Seale serves as the founding program chair for diversity, equity, and inclusion here at the Extension. Dr. Seale, can you please elaborate on our vision for DEI?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mayen. I appreciate this opportunity, and hello everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us. The vision is actually quite brief. We are looking to create a world-class outfit for DE&I here at Silicon Valley, at UC Santa Cruz in the Silicon Valley Extension. And what we're really trying to do is we're really trying to bring diverse voices. We're trying to spread it across sectors and to reach into the various dimensions of diversity, looking at the history of diversity, looking at the legislative impact, looking at our modern day situation, how did we get where we are? And of course, completing that with best practices to execute in your workplace, in your personal space and all that. So that's basically what it is that we're trying to do. That's what our vision is. And I'm looking forward to building out the programming that will help us to get to that end.
Thank you, Dr. Seale. So with that, we are going to go ahead and move into our panel discussion. For starters, we're going to have the panelists introduce themselves, but in a structured way. So for starters, I would like for each panelist, popcorn style, whoever feels the need or the desire, the power to go first, please go ahead and do so. When you do so, please give us your full name, the industry in which you work, and what brought you to the course that we're going to be discussing today.
Well, my name is Katrina Johnson, and I'm an educator at a small 6 through 12 public school. I had taken some extension courses in the past, and so I got an email inviting me to attend this class. I wasn't seeking it out necessarily. It looked interesting, the certification looked interesting, but I felt like I had probably already taken this class before. I've been to some pretty intensive anti-racism trainings and workshops over the years. But I went ahead and signed up for it, and I'm so glad that I did. It turned out to be extremely valuable, eye-opening, and a great way to build a collaboration with some people who I had never met before. So it's an excellent opportunity for me.
Thank you, Katrina.
Hi, I'm Liberty Greene. I'm a data analyst in health services research. I work at the VA in Palo Alto and the Division of Primary Care and Population Health at Stanford. I wanted to be able to participate more productively in the workplace diversity, equity, inclusion initiative that has recently started at my workplace at the VA in the research department. And I actually learned specifically about Dr. Seale's work and her frameworks for change management and DEI. And when I Googled for more information, this course came up. And so I hadn't had any training in a very long time in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I was really excited to find this place right sort of down the street where I have taken other technical courses in the past. So that's what brought me here.
Thank you, Liberty. And now we'll have Marisa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marisa Torres. I'm currently an office manager for a fintech company in the Peninsula. And I'm actually in a mid-career change. I'm trying to figure out what I want to be doing. So I've been a student at UC Extension for about a year and a half. And I was invited to a webinar called Microaggressions in the Workplace. And we had some microaggressions in my workplace, so the nature of the class really caught my eye. And I took the class and was really, I wasn't expecting much, and I was really energized by what I heard in the webinar. And then they introduced the class, and that sparked my interest, and that's how I came about in taking the course.
Perfect. Thank you, Marisa. And just to make sure that we're all on the same page, I just provided a link to the course that we're referring to in the chat. Sorry about not doing that before, but the course is called Moving Beyond Our History, Diversity Tools for Today. And in this discussion that we're about to have, you're going to hear some really powerful testimony from our students. This is not your ordinary run-of-the-mill DEI course. Dr. Seale does a wonderful job of taking the students through historical events, through the narrative that has been built, really just presenting the facts. She's not here to persuade anyone this way or that way. She is simply presenting the facts. So with that being said, to our panelists, if you had one word to describe how this year's racially related events impacted you, what would that word be? How about Liberty?
Sure. I would say seeing, if I'm picking just one word, because I think for years I've really not been paying attention, kind of allowing myself to be insulated and ignorant about the toll racism was having in our society and the lives of Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. And in the past year, I've been reading and listening to educate myself, and I really wanted to spend some time talking and learning more, which is where this class came in. And I've been looking not only sort of externally, but also more internally into myself to see myself recognize, expose, and attempt to address implicit biases and the racisms that I may be perpetuating.
Very good. What about Marisa?
I would say transformative. At first I was paralyzed, but it really got me to be more involved in what I do at work and in my personal life. And so it kind of transformed the way I saw my role in the office and allowed me to find more purpose in how I show up to work. So yeah, it's really heavy. But right now at this stage where I am in the whole year of what's been happening and what is still going on, I'm taking it more as an opportunity for personal transformation and how I can affect what I can around me.
And Katrina?
I would characterize it as frustrated, especially following the death of George Floyd. And the response was sort of surprise at the amount of energy that was generated by it, because this is something that happens very often. And so I wasn't sure what was different in this incident. And I didn't want it, I didn't myself want to be part of using this man's death for our own edification, in a sense. And I felt very frustrated about that. And then I also, you know, had to have a talk with myself and say, well, it's not time to give up, though. It is time to move forward, and that this this energy and movement, especially from our young people, is really important and something that we need to encourage.
Thank you, Katrina. And Dr. Seale, if you wouldn't mind answering that question as well. And I particularly want to get your voice on this question because you're one of our premier subject matter experts on DEI here at the Extension. And so from your point of view, this is the work that you're doing, boots on the ground, and you're also sharing the information you're uncovering with our students. If you had one word to describe how this last year's racially related events impacted you, what would that word be and why?
One word is hard, but I will say that I like to take the energy and flow with it. And so I can't say that I've ever felt more empowered. I'm sorry. I feel so much more empowered now than I ever have. And that's where the work comes from. It's really in directing that energy, directing all of that, the feelings, the experiences, into making the world better than I found it. And that's where the empowerment comes from.
Excellent. So one of the core values that we have in terms of bringing more DEI course content through Extension to the world really is the challenge of implementing real change as individuals. That's something that we want people to realize that they'll get and that they'll be faced with when they're taking our courses. So the next question I have for the panelists is, why study DEI in the first place? You could study biology, you could study artificial intelligence. Why study DEI? And as you're thinking about that answer, also share with us, what were your hesitations or concerns coming into this course? And let's have Katrina.
I just think it's just key to quality of life for everybody. I think it is the number one key to how we feel about our time on this planet, and it's just something that has to change.
Go ahead, Liberty.
I would say that kind of building on the discussion of the energy, like there is energy in my workplace right now, and I wanted to get involved in a positive way there. And I thought in order to do that, it would be best to get more educated, get more familiar with the language, prepare and have some difficult conversations in a supportive classroom-ish setting. I mean, the way Dr. Seale ran the class was that she provided tons of content and then we would discuss and reflect. And I thought that was a really powerful way to learn the material and grapple with the material in a way that I thought would help me go back then to my workplace and have those conversations, which I hadn't had at work in the past.
And Marisa?
I was cautiously optimistic in taking the class. Luckily, I took the webinar, so that helped me. But the group that was starting out in our corporate headquarters was starting to get usurped by HR. And part of my skepticism about DEI when it gets sucked into the corporate culture is sometimes it becomes food, fun, and flags and not policy. So I was hesitant to join the employee group because it looked like it was going to be taken away from the employees and be made more of a party planning committee instead of real discussions about allyship and making policy changes to affect the real world effects that were going on in our company. Like we have a high turnover of young marginalized groups. And with George Floyd and most recent with the Asian hate crimes, it was really important for me to be an ally as a person of color to other people of color within the company. And I took this class hoping that it'll give me some tools to be a better ally. So I can then lead groups within the company and kind of show them what allyship is. And I thought that as a person of color to teach people or maybe share what I need as allyships, I thought I could model that. And this class, I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to find some frameworks to help me with my goal there.
Thank you. So I want to rewind just a little bit. We just discussed the words that you all would use for this past year's racially related events. And now that you have taken the course and have gotten some more framework and scaffolding around you, if we were to rewind 5 years ago and you're thinking about what's going on in the world and the nation, would that same word that you just shared with us, would it be the same? Or would it be a different word? Go ahead, Marisa.
What happened this year, I could not have imagined this in 2016 or even while Obama was still in office. I felt that I felt hopeful in a way of faith in the old system, because we were always told that, it's, process is slow, but it bends slowly and it just, eventually we'll get there. And after this year, it was like the veil was lifted, and we found out the emperor had no clothes. And I kind of felt really hurt and disappointed, but from just the intensity of the change, I actually right now feel transformation is a little bit more possible, whereas maybe 2 years ago, 4 years ago, I was a little bit more cynical, and I was kind of like, I have hope that someday it will happen, but I would not have said 4 years ago that what's happening in America is transformational.
Thank you. What about you, Liberty?
I would say, I think I do have more information, hopefully more understanding. And I think I know or I think I know more about like how our actions are enabling systemic racism and dynamics, regardless of what we might feel or think or want. So I think I feel differently today than I did even last year, let alone 5 years ago.
Thank you. And Katrina?
I would say that I do feel more empowered than I did 5 years ago. I feel like I'm more informed. I feel like I have a better understanding of what is in my wheelhouse, and I notice the smaller things more now. And those are the things that I can start to work on, that I am working on, and that do make a difference every day.
Thank you. So before I move to the next question, I see here that we have a question from one of the attendees. It's a very powerful question and is a great prelude to the next question that I want to ask. So first, I do want to go ahead and read the question that this attendee offered. And Dr. Seale, if you wouldn't mind reading your response, and then I'd like to lead into the next question. It's a great segue. So thank you, anonymous attendee, for sending this question in. So the question reads, what are some ways I can reflect on my DEI practices and my own biases that I might not be aware of?
Well, one of the strategies that we used in the sessions is really is reflection, but it's reflecting on the origins of where these feelings, these biases derived. And it's not just you having this unique experience. Honestly, it's really a systemic situation. And so what I often do to assist is to have participants, students, whomever, look back at the first time you've actually experienced that emotion, that feeling, that fear of, or that negative connection with a person that's different than you. And then you really investigate where it originated. Like, who told you that that person or that look was bad, or that behavior was horrible, or that whatever. And then you actually get to see where it came from, that it's really not something that's innate, it's something that was taught. And that's where a lot of our biases come from. Actually, all of our biases are taught, because it's the way that we interpret something that happens based on information that we're getting from other people that we trust. So that was that's how we investigate. That's how we determine, how to work with our biases. And then as we learn in our class, DEI practices, they really depend on your environment. What type of organization are you working with? What's the region? Marisa had a really strong situation with that. What are we looking at here? What is your personality type? What's the situation that exists? And so this is that's how you determine how you approach your diversity. All things are not equal. So it's important to understand the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the frameworks, so that you'll know how to apply them.
Thank you. So it sounds like it starts with personal reflection. And this leads into the next question I have for the panelists. So after you've gotten the tools that'll help you along personal reflection, what are the most effective tools for discussing DEI? And we'll start with Liberty.
I think some of the tools that she provided was simply discussing DE&I in our groups first, right? Together we did that. And I think in addition to that, she gave us some really concrete, I don't know, I guess strategies, perhaps I would say. Like, for example, I remember during a discussion about barriers to inclusion, we talked about in groups and out groups, which wasn't language or a concept that I'd really thought about, like what it meant for me when I was in the in group based on my tenure in the organization or my similarities with other people I worked with. And we talked about things like inconsistent responses to mistakes. I remember being one where I hadn't thought about it before. And I think it helped me sort of think about how I was reacting to and responding to my colleagues when I was asking for more help or more information, and when I was providing more information. And I also liked a reminder to be open to changing my own practices, beliefs, and behaviors. And I think being really explicit about what change feels like in an organization was really helpful.
Thank you. Katrina or Marisa?
I think, I mean, first of all, just working with diverse groups of people and not necessarily going towards the most familiar people to you. There's strength in diversity, real strength, and it takes more time, and it takes real listening, and it takes believing what other people say about what they're experiencing, rather than trying to reframe it for them or comfort them that this is a one-off, or give them a different way to think about it, but really believing what people say.
Thank you. And Marisa?
What actually for me, it was really evident, like after the first homework, at the first homework assignment, which was a reflection on the origins of bias and the gender bias. I took the homework assignment and focused on gender bias, and actually had the opportunity to apply it to what was going on at work and in our workplace. And as part of the homework assignment, I found an article about Richard Branson, and he noticed that all the women were taking meeting notes all the time, no matter what her rank was. The woman was always taking notes. So he decided he was going to take notes, and he was going to change his managerial culture, where if you're the manager, you're the one taking notes, and then you're going to make sure the next manager is going to be the one taking notes at the next meeting. And I thought of all the grumblings going on in my workplace, which I manage the office, is that all the women get, whether they want to or not, end up planning the baby showers, end up, regardless if it's for a male or a female employee having the baby, they end up planning the team happy hour if it's an offsite for their team, even though they're the senior person in their group. They're going to be the one planning, making the reservations for the team. If somebody's getting married, they're the ones that buy the card and the gift, And one of the structures that was introduced to us was you got to get buy-in. You got to understand the culture. You got to build coalition building and kind of get a temperature before you start making changes, or assuming, oh, this is just misogyny, and is just basically going to people and having a conversation and going, hey, do you know what's going on here? And many times we just automatically fall into gender traditional roles and culturally, gender business, and we just do it automatically. And when you're presented with a structure where you look at organizational change, it gives you, a hit list of how to approach this difficult conversation of how are we going to change our internal practices, as mundane as picking up a birthday card. Something as little as that can have profound change on just the office culture. If the office culture is going to be, hey, the manager always buys the birthday card, that's a profound change, but that has to be agreed upon by every manager in the office. So it kind of changes just the way we interact with each other, and the way we change our internal culture. And I would have never thought of doing that, and it just made me a little bit more braver in how to implement change in a very systemic way.
Very good. And thank you, Liberty and Marisa, for going ahead and elaborating on the examples of new structures and language that you were able to utilize effectively. I'm wondering, Katrina, do you have any specific examples on using new structures and language effectively?
Yeah, well, while going through the course, we had formed a small DEI group at the school that I work at, and I found that taking the course was definitely helping me to facilitate change in the dynamic of the group, and really just get ready to be honest with each other, regardless of if it's embarrassing, it's uncomfortable, it might even be offensive. And I think that being able, again, to do that with this group of people, the relative strangers, made me feel like, okay, I can go do this with people that I know, and it's really valuable. So I think just being able to have that experience here was enabled me to be able to carry it over into another setting.
Very good. Thank you, Katrina. So for the next question, I would like to go ahead and tee up Liberty. And I'm wondering, when it comes to the course that you completed, did you learn anything that surprised you in the curriculum?
I learned a lot of things actually that surprised me, both historical, like shouldn't be surprised, I suppose, that I came sort of lacking foundational history knowledge. And so the course provided that kind of information for me. And I learned, I think, both from my classmates and the course itself about structures and practices in our workplace that I maybe just didn't sort of think about, right? So Marisa just mentioned note taking. You know, I work at a place where we say everyone should be involved and be contributing, but I don't often take notes, and I don't think I fully appreciated how hard it is to be both present and contributing to a meeting and be the newest, most junior member of a team keeping up with notes. And so I think I would sort of what was made visible to me were things that I was not paying attention to, or just hadn't sort of considered, or wasn't part of my role, so I hadn't been thinking about it. So I thought that was really, there was just a lot sort of in the class in a ton of different domains, because even though it was relatively short in time, we managed to, I think, cover and talk about a lot.
Thank you. So what about you, Katrina? Was there anything that surprised you when you were going through the curriculum?
Some of the historical stuff I did not know about, and I think it was really interesting of the global perspectives on how we see gender, how we see sexuality, that that there have been times and spaces in history where things were actually less limiting than they are now. So that was really interesting and eye-opening. I'm an educator, and I've got 2.5 decades in, and I had not heard about the Ugly Children Act, Dr. Seale. I didn't know about that. Never heard about that. And so I was raised here in California, and I was a child in the mid 1970s, and we studied California history and never heard about the internment. I did not hear about the internment camps until I went to college. And so it always amazed me how some of these things are pretty well kept secrets. Well, some of them are, literally happening right in front of people. So yeah, I did get some new perspectives for sure.
Thank you, Katrina. And Marisa, was there anything that surprised you about the curriculum? And I want to tee you up, Dr. Seale. I would love if you can elaborate on what Katrina introduced to us just now. I have never heard of that act. So if you could share some insight after Marisa gives her response.
I was surprised at how deep and complex of issues I was able to dive into with my fellow students after Dr. Seale's presentation, because it is very fact-based. It's like, and it's hitting you like, whoa, that happened. Whoa, that happened. Oh, we had a law called that, and you're just sitting with the facts. And then when we get into the group discussion, there's so much thought and meaningful discussion that follows. And I just got so much out of such a short class. I think it was only like a 4-week course, but I was surprised at, because of the simplicity of the structure, not obviously the content. The content was very deep and profound, but it was just, the structure was just so clear cut that then it allowed us as students to go in deep and get some real meaning out of the discussion. And it's not like you were waiting for someone to finish, like you were engaged every time somebody shared, and it kind of added to the experience after every student shared their perspective.
Thank you, Marisa. All right, Dr. Seale, enlighten us. What was this? Did I hear it correctly? Did Katrina say Ugly Child Act?
Yeah, so during the early 1900s or whatever, with the eugenics laws and things like that. So the transition was from institutionalizing your kids or getting rid of them. There actually there was a law where you could, it was called the ugly child, essentially. I think it was the ugly child law, where you could actually dispose of your child. And nobody who had any type of visible deformities could be in public view. You would actually be taken away. And this went away, I think, in '75. The last Ugly Child Act was repealed in 1975. So that's how long it lasted, almost 70 something, almost 80 years in the United States. So yeah, but this is our history of exclusion.
Oh my gosh, this is the first time I'm hearing of it.
You have to take the class then.
I need to take the class. I need to do that. I will be doing that. So I'd like to move into our final portion of the questions for the panelists, and it's focusing on the work that lies ahead. So the question is, now that you have more information about the historic legacy of racism and the current challenges we face, what makes you hopeful? Do you believe that you can make a difference? And I'd like to start with Marisa, if that's okay.
Well, I'm actually implementing a lot of what I learned in this class right now at work. I'm actually the one that's writing out our reentry plan for the office. And so I'm actually approaching it methodically with some of the frameworks. The one that I've been studying the most is the SHINE methodology that's basically looking at corporate culture and understanding corporate culture before you implement change. So you become realistic. So there's what ideally you want to change and what needs to be changed. And then you look at the reality of what you can do realistically right now. And that's not to say that we can't change things profoundly in the long run, but taking this course kind of gave me a language to use that I didn't have before. And it also gave me a framework just to apply to to an issue that used to be very emotional for me. It used to be something that I only experienced. And now I'm seeing that it directly, bias directly impacts people with learning disabilities, working mothers, pregnant women, people with that have different body shapes than other people. And that is something that affects every aspect of the work that I'm doing. And I'm just now looking at my work differently. So now, like when I order chairs, I look at people's sizes rather than how to spend the least amount of money with the one chair that is uncomfortable for everybody, right? The frameworks can be applied to make my role a little bit more meaningful for me. So I'm actually taking what I've learned and moving forward with it in a real way.
Thank you. And so same question for Katrina and then Liberty. Now that you have this information regarding the historic legacy of racism and the challenges that we face, what makes you hopeful and do you believe that you can make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, if I go turn on the news right now, there's going to be a lot of people talking and criticizing police activities, which is legitimate. And I also think it's really important to look at ourselves and what we're doing in our own organizations. And I am now better equipped to advocate for other people within my own organization and within my and myself. And this this DEI group that we have at work, what we're doing is we are working on forming healing circles for our students so that they always will have a safe and supportive space to come to and to talk openly and to ask for the wisdom of the group and know that they have people to lean on. And so that is our way that we're putting this all to work right now.
Thank you. And Liberty?
Yeah, I would say, well, for one, I feel really appreciative of all of the sharing that people did within this group to help make visible to me things that were probably happening in my workplace. I think one of the things that Dr. Seale pushed us to do was be aware of our own privilege and how to leverage that to be an ally in our workplace. I'm really fortunate that my organization had started a DEI initiative. So there is some space and some resources for doing this work. And I actually, because I found this kind of foundational knowledge so, I don't know, powerful or meaningful, I'm hoping that we can do some of this same kind of training or experience at my workplace. And I think simply like having discussions are new to at least my experience and my current role, and we are doing that. It feels kind of slow, but I'm hoping that that's because we're sort of in it for a long term rather than any sort of fast, short changes.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll have Liberty, then Marisa, then Katrina. And so this next question is, what strategies have you been able to apply or feel ready to apply within your workplace or industry to create a more inclusive environment?
I think I might have mentioned this, but in one of our classes, there was, I don't know, maybe like 10 things to make a more inclusive workplace. And I know I wrote down a couple of them about creating a safe environment, having conversations with colleagues, being an active listener. And I think especially now that I work entirely remote, my entire team is remote. We haven't seen each other in person in a long time. And I think one of the things that we started to do more intentionally, both in my DEI work group as well as my own small work team, is make time to talk to each other, even just a little bit, so that everyone on the team is heard and acknowledged. And I think I might have gotten that language directly from Dr. Seale. There's been moments of weird, awkward silence, but I think we're now kind of used to it, and everyone like is being sort of part of the team. And then I think just having those conversations, and I know I talked with some colleagues about our typical work style is that you respond to emails fast, you respond to questions fast. The person who can kind of get the words out most quickly is the most heard. And I think we've tried to be a little bit more intentional about making things available in advance of a meeting then, so that those of us who need more digestion time have that, or asking for more feedback later. We've also tried to use Teams as like a team communication instead of only relying on emails, in which people are regularly inadvertently left off and then feel sort of out of the loop. So I think trying to take advantage of technology that should make communicating and connecting and learning and building on each other more easy.
Thank you. Marisa?
For me, it's important when people start coming into the office that we start having some real discussions about inclusivity, and not just racial inclusivity, because that makes it very focused, and I want people to feel included, to have it more broad, because maybe not all of us have the opportunity to share our community with people of different backgrounds, but we do know somebody with Asperger's syndrome, or we know somebody who has some mobility issues, you know, and I wanted to make our inclusivity discussions more, you know, more inclusive, so that everyone feels like, oh, I'm a white male, I have nothing to contribute. It's like, whoa, you know, you are the head of creative. Maybe you can look at what creative is doing and look at what you can do to be more inclusive there. I would like to open up that conversation to everybody in the office, like, what is your definition of inclusive? And just hold space for more conversation about, so everybody takes ownership on that, and then focus on the harder discussions that I would like to have later on. But I just want to go in at a very basic level of how can we just be more inclusive? How can we just make the office friendlier to somebody in a wheelchair, or someone who just broke their leg? You know, you don't realize how limiting something can be until, you know, you have LASIK surgery and you can't see for a week. You know, it really changes people's perspectives. And so my goal is to take what I learned and just take it down to a very basic level. So I think we should all start with inclusivity and then go from there.
Thank you, Marisa. And Katrina?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said. I think just like looking at all the policies and practices through a DEI lens, it's, when you do that, it's surprising what you see and how much you see. And I'm really watching for people who aren't speaking and who are going quiet, and finding ways to reach out to them to find out what they need in terms of support, and working on advocacy. Because I think when we're willing to sort of stick out our necks, that builds a community of people who are watching out for each other and making sure that all voices get heard.
Thank you, Katrina. For this final question for the panelists, just to give some context to it, it seems that every day we wake up, more increasingly so nowadays, there is some bad news, some horrible news, some footage that's traumatic to marginalized people in this country. And it can really build the mindset of, am I next? Is someone in my family next? Is a coworker next? You really start to worry about your safety. And all of these different aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion, you start to feel like there is no protection, no matter what part of your identity might be attacked and caught on film that day. And so the final question to all of our panelists, including Dr. Seale, because I would love to hear your point of view on this as well. How do you stay positive throughout the disappointment, frustration, anger, and fear? How about you, Liberty? And then we'll do Katrina and Marisa and Dr. Seale.
I think, for one, I was fortunate to have connected with this course, because I think when Dr. Seale felt sort of frustrated or disappointed energy, she offered us more time to process together, which was really an amazing thing to have experienced. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is that when I've connected with colleagues or others, usually one of us is more positive and one of us isn't. And sometimes we can help balance each other and sort of be the day that it's really hard for me and find someone that has more energy or positivity left. And I think, I have a lot of privilege, and I hope that that alone sort of makes me have the stamina to keep going.
Thank you. Katrina?
Yeah, I think that coalition, and building the teams so that on the days when one of us is not able to muster the energy or to be positive, that there is somebody else that can carry that day, and keep the work going no matter what.
Thank you. Marisa?
Just to reiterate what Liberty and Katrina said, I've been really surprised by listening and sharing, being vulnerable and sharing my truth, even though it's scary. And we're in a space where retaliation is not uncommon. So sometimes it's hard to stay positive when you feel that being honest might have repercussions. And it's been my experience, even getting past the fear, to stay positive. I've just been really surprised at the support I get from people that I don't expect to. And people share their vulnerability and just how it changes my mood and perspective just to hear some other voice, or just to hear somebody say, I feel frustrated too, or yeah, that bums me out as well. It just, just to know that there's somebody else out there that is not going to knock you down, sometimes just helps you get through the day.
Thank you, Marisa. Dr. Seale?
So I'm the strong friend, right? I'm the one who everybody comes to when they need to hear XYZ, and this being my work, it does make it extraordinarily difficult to be sad or upset or to experience the disappointment that is never ending. So what I go very internally. And I devote myself to actually even more study. I try to do a lot of meditation, a lot of quiet time, to just kind of quiet my mind and quiet my emotions. There are few people, honestly, that you can really go to and just express these emotions to, that could really understand it in a way where you feel valued and you feel heard. And I believe that the group that we formed was really, really a powerful group. The way that we were able to, everyone was able to share what was going on with their, their workplaces and what was happening. And that for me was really, really powerful. It was really encouraging to see that hope that we each have, that little piece of hope is in each one of them, and some of our other attendees, because we had other participants who were very, very committed to getting the work done. So that really, that shores me up.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much to all of the panelists for providing your thoughtful insights and really having the courage to go and learn about DEI and how to implement it. Now we're going to switch gears and address some of the questions that our attendees have posted. If you haven't posted a question yet, we still have about 30 more minutes, so please feel free. The first question is coming from Javon Hicks. Hi, Javon, it's nice to see you here. The question reads, I am interested in hearing from Dr. Seale and the panelists if there were times during class discussions when it became more difficult to discuss implicit or explicit personal biases with students of color, particularly Black students who may experience these macro or microaggressions more consistently. Can you share what those discussions taught you? How about you, Dr. Seale? Can we start with you?
Well, I believe in creating an environment of psychological safety, regardless of who is there. And we looked at the experiences of marginalized groups, including African Americans, very soberly. And I think that all I can say is the environment that I attempted to create, I don't know how, I wasn't uncomfortable, but I don't know how uncomfortable it may have gotten for, my group. So I would like for them to share about those experiences, because I think that that would be much more rich and informative. So any of you who have had those experiences in the class, please share.
As a Latina, I actually was very honest and shared a lot of my experiences. And I found the class, my classmates really supportive, and the other people of color in the class were able to contribute from their perspective to help me, and do it in a way that was very profound. The class, the structure, I mean, I may have felt uncomfortable because I was sharing something very vulnerable, but I never felt unsafe. I always felt respected. The non-people of color in the class were very open and receptive to hearing, feedback and giving feedback. And it was always very respectful. And I never felt attacked or unsafe, or I was able to, it was a really positive experience for me, even in some tough moments where we were discussing some issues that were really hard to discuss for me, that were really messy topics. And we were able to go in and unpack them, which was huge. So, I mean, that's my experience from that perspective.
Thank you. How about you, Liberty?
I don't have that perspective. I am a white woman, but what I really appreciated was people sharing their experiences in our group. I appreciated people caring or feeling I don't know, close enough, or like they were willing to point out places where I had blind spots or wasn't aware. I remember a conversation where Dr. Seale said, think about the nonverbal cues that you have given or may have been given as a child or now. And so I think it felt like a place where people were being honest, and I appreciated that.
Thank you. Katrina?
I think what really worked about this group and about the structure was that all of us were coming with openness to be vulnerable and with a supportive stance. So I did not feel uncomfortable about speaking or about listening. It was a very supportive environment.
Thank
I
you.
think for everybody. Yeah.
And I think a big piece of that, and for anyone who does DE&I work, is really opening up the reflection point where you actually seek out the why behind whatever emotion you're having. It's a lot of psychological work. It's creating that psychological safety where all of us are experiencing at the same time. Because when someone says, something, and we're feeling an emotion, we're feeling some whatever, if we're able to investigate that and unpack that as the why we're feeling that, it really helps us to be able to listen and to share it in a way that's constructive. Having been a recipient of microaggression or overt discrimination, we feel things, and each one of us can say that we have had that experience. So let's transfer that to what this person is sharing with us at this point. And even Liberty was saying, oh, I haven't had, but there are experiences that each of us have had that we can kind of start with having empathy. And that's not all that will help you to be, much more of an ally in that round, but it does help. It gets you on the road. So I think that was that may have been a helpful piece.
Thank you. And the next question is actually specifically for Katrina regarding your occupation as an educator and the skills that you gained from the course. So the question reads, and thank you to the attendee for submitting this question. The question reads, has Katrina found that taking this course has helped her to be a more culturally aware teacher, not only in her classroom with students of color and students of privilege, but also in creating an anti-racist school environment amongst administrators and staff?
Yeah, it has. Again, I'm really, there's a lot going on right now that's come out of COVID and the closures of the school buildings, the returning to the school building. And so every policy procedure is under scrutiny right now. And this is it's a great opportunity to really think through the entire experience that our students are having. What supports are we providing? What structures do we have and policies do we have that actually get in people's way? And so going through this course and hearing from others has definitely heightened my awareness of all of this. And there's a lot of turnover too. And so looking and talking about who needs to be here in this environment as far as the adults go. While all of this is really unfortunate that this has happened, it also creates a great opportunity to re-examine a lot of what we're almost everything we're doing through a DEI perspective.
Thank you, Katrina. So I'm going to open it up again. If there are any questions that the attendees would like to submit, and while you're getting your thoughts together, I did want to share from my perspective, I'm a Black woman, that's a fact, and I'm also a chemist. That's not something that you regularly see. And my first career in chemistry was riddled with lots of different macro and microaggressions from students telling me to my face that Black women don't teach chemistry. What are you doing here as my educator? From working in Silicon Valley and being at tech conferences where people refused to talk to me as, at the time, the director of the engineering and technology department, but they would talk to someone that was reporting to me at the time who happens to be an older white gentleman. And I can't imagine going through the different parts of my career without knowing, I would say foundationally, the nomenclature that exists within diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a chemist, nomenclature is what helps us to name things. And I see that in life. Naming things gives you power when you're going through certain things in life. If you can't describe it, it's a really nice way for someone to come in and gaslight you and say, you're not really going through that, because you don't know the name of a macroaggression or a microaggression or racial spotlighting. And so I'm just really happy to hear that the panelists now have even better, stronger skills to be able to assess what's happening when they see something that happens and they want to say something. And thank you, Dr. Seale, for providing the expertise to make the students and really the attendees as well have that sense of strength through the skills that can be developed through a course like this. Okay, so I don't see any other questions coming in, which is totally fine. There's no pressure. And so what we're going to do, we can go ahead and Carrie, if you had any last minute announcements. Otherwise, we have about 20 minutes of a term I recently learned, found time, when something ends early. On behalf of the extension, we just want to thank you. Thank you so much for attending this talk. We hope to have more. Like I said, DEI across industry, so get ready. We're in the process of getting ready or getting together lots of really interesting conversations, one of which I'll kind of pitch, DEI for AI. That is DEI for artificial intelligence. So it's a big thing, and I'm really excited to bring those conversations here. Thank you.
I just say thank you, Mayen. Thank you to all of our panelists, Marisa, Liberty, Katrina, Dr. Seale, PK. Again, if you think of something you'd like to ask later on, we're always here. You can send our questions over to extension@ucsc.edu. Someone will be in touch with you shortly. A friendly reminder that our next session for Moving Beyond Our History, Diversity Tools for Today actually begins next Saturday, April 24th. And you can find the link to our course in the chat. Enrollment is still open. And if you're interested in a similar webinar with a slightly different perspective, we have an event coming up on May 5th called Leading Diversity in the C-Suite. And that will be with Extension instructor Stephanie Evans-Wamusa, who is also teaching DEI leadership and strategic impact, which begins May 13th. So lots coming up. We hope to see you again. And again, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Good night.